see if we can fix that. Let's start all over. Everybody, good evening tonight. I'll make sure I cut that before we put that in there. How's everybody tonight? That looks like it was a quick fix. Let me know, Tony, if that was a quick fix or not. Or DRH, let me know. Anybody that was coming on and telling me there was no sound. We should have sound now. It looks like the microphone is on. And I am just checking as we're speaking to make sure we're on the right microphone. And that looks like everything should be fine now. All right, good. Good to see that we're on and ready to go. Hey, welcome. I'm Jeff Colson. This is Junior Hockey Advisor. This is Wednesday night, Thanksgiving week. And I was just saying before all this happened, let's take a little time to say thank you and look back at this last year. First and foremost, I'm thankful for the people, our audience. We've built this up to, much bigger than we ever expected. I started doing this to counter bad advisors, to counter bad advice that was coming across social media, and actually try to give you some, basically balanced approach to looking at things so that you would have the ability to come here and, try to find out what the real story is behind things and not having to be leaned with any kind of bias. And even today, I was looking at a lot of social media. It's crazy how many people put their opinions on things that really don't have the background to be giving opinions on things. I guess anybody can put an opinion on social media. However, hopefully we're there to balance that and to give you a different look at things that is a little bit steadier, a little bit more in the middle of the road, and a little bit more based on just getting the good information out there. So we've been doing this for a few years. I'm very, very thankful for the size of the audience we built. We're 30, 40,000 people now are involved in this. The thousands of people just watching today. YouTube, I was checking up on our YouTube site and watching the clicks come through. And, we had over 1,000 people click on our videos today. That's crazy. That's crazy. I was happy early on in this when 2 or 3 people were actually following us. I was like, man, that's great. That's a big show. Let's have some fun with this. So thank you all for being a part of this and helping us grow this market in this information source. Extremely, just so thankful for, 2 people in general. One is Dave Kennedy. Dave Kennedy is a monitor. Basically he is he's the sheriff of our discussion group, our Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group. He's got a real good eye for information, and he's got a real good sense of how to keep things moderated properly on there. And very, very thankful for Dave and for everything he's done for the show. And the other person, although we haven't seen much of him lately, he's still been a huge part of this last year, is Mike Bloomer, and what Bloomer has done to help elevate this and add a different lighthearted approach to this topic has been great for the last year. So very thankful for those 2 gentlemen and their help they've given to this growing. So happy Thanksgiving to all of you. I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving over the next few days, and eat some good food and make sure you actually spend some time with the family. Let's talk junior hockey. And this is crazy times we live in. This is in my world, this is bigger than, I shouldn't say that, but this is more exciting and more interesting to me with what's going on with junior hockey than all the election stuff combined. And I know it. I don't want anybody coming back and thinking, oh, hockey's more important than the future of our countries. No, I didn't mean it that way. I just meant it's more exciting to actually dig into this every day and to watch what's going on. So tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a recap of everything. Then I'm going to kind of update you on some things. The recap's important because different people watch this. And last week, the video quality was terrible. Please let me know if there's a difference in the video quality tonight. I've already had a couple people, jumping on and giving us some insight. I sure would like to know how the video quality is. But we're going to recap, update. Then we're going to talk about what this means for players at all levels, We're not going to talk just about what this means for players that are super elite, that are going to play D1 and possibly pro. That's the easiest part. And that's where most of the people that are commenting on this, they're spending their time. That's where they're kind of sailing their boat in that lane. Easy. Let's talk about what this is going to do for tier 3 players. And I spent a lot of time on the phone with coaches, owners, and some commissioners this week to try to get a sense of that. Also, let's talk about the posturing tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about new things, a new way of thinking about this. Let's talk a little bit about how this all restructures out and what this looks like. And we'll still do the same thing we did last week. We'll talk about the winners and losers. So with that said, let's jump into this. Recap. There's 3 areas that are important to understand in junior hockey, and they all deal with the how this relates to NCAA Division I. The 3 areas that are important to understand are the things we've been talking about a lot, which is one is the portal, the NCAA Division I portal, and we'll talk briefly about that, but just want to make sure everybody understands that. It's the name, image, and likeness deals, and it is the rule change with major junior hockey. That's the most significant and timely right now, but they all go together. The portal was the ability for players to change and go from one team or one college university to another without any actual ramifications and immediacy. They didn't have to sit out a year. They didn't get punished. It wasn't look like a negative thing coming in. Hey, Dave, I just saw you pop on. Maybe you heard I just said thank you for all the things you're doing with the program and help. I sure appreciate it. So everybody, if you get a chance on our social media, make sure you say hi to Dave and give him a thanks too. It always is nice to know you're appreciated. Anyway, so that's what the portal is. And why is that significant for this? One is it opened up, and it was the first crack in shifting the responsibility and the ability to control your destiny. It is really a shift to the player side. The players took more control of their career and where they're going. Teams had less control, even though teams were able to take advantage of this. And this became important for teams to actually utilize. It really gave the power to the players, and it shifted the powers of the players. Now, this really was pushed hard by Division I football, and to a lesser extent, Division I basketball, only because of numbers. The football is that's the whale. That's the big one. So once you understand that the portal has a piece to play in this, the next part of this that came around very soon afterwards over the last couple of seasons here is this name, image, and likeness goes by NIL. And what does that mean? Well, it gave players the ability at the Division I level to find their own sources of income. They can be in commercials. They can sell their logo on a jersey. They can sign up to make money off their name, their image, and their likeness, which is huge. And now it's really catapulted into some crazy level. At the Division I football level, the University of Michigan just signed a player for $12 million. Think about that. This kid's going to get $12 million to play football at the University of Michigan, a quarterback. So as a freshman, he's already coming in making more than rookies make in the NFL. It's just unbelievable amount of money that's being thrown around at that level. But what does that do? Once again, it shifts the power to the player, and the player gets that. So it's important to understand the NIL, because the NIL is counterintuitive for the reason that they kept major junior hockey away. There's always been this basically it was East and West Germany. You had one side of it, which was there was a wall down the middle, and on one side you had major junior hockey, which was the WHL, the QMJHL, and the OHL. That's the 3 regional areas that cover Canada, with some American teams involved with a couple of those leagues too. But that was major junior hockey. They were more affiliated with the NHL. They had more tradition of producing pro players. and they had people that are under contract with pro teams that played at that level. Maybe they go up, they come back down a little bit at the beginning of the season. Most of the players that were drafted, when this first started, all came out of those leagues. That's significantly changed over the last 5-10 years with the advent of the growth of the USHL. We're not going to get into the whole history of this, but it's important to understand that there was two factions. Americans could not play in that league unless they chose to give up all rights to go to the NCAA and play Division I. You stepped into that camp, you skated with the team and spent, I think it was over 24 hours with the team, or accepted any kind of, even a hat. You accepted a hat or a jersey from them, boom, you were considered a professional in the eyes of the rules with the NCAA, and you lost a minimum of 1 year of eligibility, if not more. And by going there, you're making a conscious choice. You're making a conscious choice that you are now going to, seek pro hockey. Now, there were some concessions, and that concession thing is important for us to understand, because the concession situation was, if you went up there, you'd still get money for college. They would give you scholarship monies that would build up in a pool. And when you were done with that league, for every year you participated, you got money back that you could use for college. You just couldn't go play for the NCAA Division I or Division III teams. You'd have to go play U Sport, which is Canadian, club, for lack of better ways of explaining it, or you played ACHA hockey, which was American club. So we got the two things. We've got the portal, and then we've got the NIL. Those are our two factors that preceded the ruling. The NIL coming out started people pushing back and saying, hold it, why am I being punished by going up to this league, Canadian or American? And all of a sudden there were some lawsuits that started happening, particularly one in Buffalo, that pushed back on this whole system, saying this isn't right, this isn't fair. The pressure was put on the NCAA to change that rule and to allow those major junior players now to be eligible, which starting August 1st of this year. And that date is not really relevant because the scouting and the push for players into those leagues is already happening. And what I mean by that is now the dam is broken open. Those players are now eligible. Technically, August 1st is when those players will be eligible to go to the NCAA Division I level. But the shifting of talent pools, the actual chess game of where you're playing and teams taking advantage of moving players, that all started immediately in early November, the first week of November, second week of November. All of a sudden we started seeing movement because of the rule change. Now you're seeing major junior players playing in very little, but coming down and playing in the amateur levels in the United States. You're seeing commitments coming out of that league where, you're seeing colleges commit to players that are playing in the major junior ranks. And we'll talk about that with some numbers and some updates on that. And the biggest thing is you're seeing a shift of players that are playing elsewhere moving to that league. And that's the most important part, is that league now potentially supplants all other leagues as being the place to play. And I'll tell you why that is in a second. So that's a little bit of the recap of that. And let's talk a little bit about the update. Let's say some hi to some people. Obviously, we saw DRH come in. We saw Troy come in. Thank you very much. Saw Dave come in. Hockey Dad comes on and says, saw Bloomer at the Tier 1 Elite Showcase about a month ago. Super nice guy. Your best video and sound quality yet. Well, I'm glad to hear the video and quality. We invested in some new equipment, and we did have a down period there. So I'm glad to hear that the quality is up, and I appreciate that. So I'm glad you met Bloomer too, and I'm glad that he had a good impression on you. Let's just put it that way. So anybody else that comes on, feel free to throw your comments on. Feel free just to say hi. You got a question? Obviously, we're here for the questions. We will comment and question. We'll comment on anything, and we'll answer as many questions as we can as the night goes on. All right, so let's talk update. What's going on right now as far as this goes? I think last week, which was poor quality, we switched a lot of equipment out. I did tell you though that as far as the players and the movement, last week we had 27 players that had moved into major junior hockey, meaning they had left other leagues and had moved into play either in the Western Hockey League, the OHL, which is the Ontario Hockey League, or moved into the Quebec Major Junior League, the three major leagues. That number now is up to 32. We've seen that much movement into the leagues, which it is what it is. Excuse me. I got to back up. I gave you the wrong status data there. As far as movement of new players, that didn't happen. Take that back. Strike the record. We had 29 players that were U.S. based, and it was in the WHL. That number hasn't moved. The OHL at 35 hasn't moved. The Q has 5 players. That hasn't moved. These are U.S. based players that are up there. What we have seen is more commitments in that league for NCAA Division I. We went from 27 to 32. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean all of those were new. In fact, there's only been one new commitment to a player. The rest of those were players that were committed somewhere else that have moved into the league, mostly Canadian. So, where are these players moving from? Well, the BCHL has taken a huge hit. I would say we're pushing over 20 now. I don't have that number in front of me, but the BCHL, Wenatchee just got smacked when this first happened. 6 to 8 players right away left the team and went there. Now, why would I leave the BCHL to go play, in the Western Hockey League? Well, one is the Western Hockey League has a much better presence, much more visibility to the NHL and to pro hockey. So if that's the case, now I get the best of both worlds. If I'm already a committed player or I've already got the ability to be committed, I can move over to that league and get more exposure. The crowds are bigger. Just little things, per diem, meal money on the roads, stipends, little things. Now we're not talking, thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking, meal money and some money, and depending on how you're structured, that could be a little bit more for some players, a little bit less for others. So it also could be proximity. If I'm playing in the BCHL and I'm from Calgary and Calgary wants me to play in the WHL, and I can play in front of my home area, all my fans from that area or my family and friends. Hey, that's great. Make the move and enjoy it. That's not going to hurt. Like we said last week, what does this hurt and who does this hurt the most? The group that gets hurt the most from this is going to be the BCHL. They're going to have to shift their mindset and shift their focus. They're going to lose players, obviously, and they're going to lose talent. So everything's going to take a reset. And to kind of explain this a little bit better, our top dog before this all happened was the USHL. That was the top dog in the model for NCAA Division I hockey. Sat on top real easy. And below that, if you kind of looked at this as a building block, on the U.S. side, there was the North American Hockey League. On the Canadian side, there was the BCHL. As far as the amount of players ratio per league or per team, the BCHL crushes it. They have a real high ratio of Division I commitments. 10, 11, 12 per team right now. If you kind of go through and look at what they have, easy to do. College Hockey Inc. Just go there, hit on the recruiting page, hit on the commitment page. You can click the button and pull it up so you can see by team. Now the numbers are going to be less now because a lot of these kids that were on some teams like Wenatchee are actually over in the WHL or the Q now. But so you had this pyramid built. For Division I hockey, it was pretty much you were in 3 leagues. You were in the USHL, you were in the BCHL, or you were in the NAL. That was it. Okay. Now imagine this pyramid here. You got the USHL with 16 teams, of which the National Training and Development is part of that. So you've got 15 other teams in this top league that supplies NCAA Division I hockey. All of a sudden, much more is available. Now you've got 60 plus teams that are above that in 3 leagues. So you went from 16 on top of the pyramid to 60 teams that sit on top of this with the WHL, the Q, the W and the Q. I'm trying to keep this set up in the how it sits in the geographic model, and then the OHL in the middle. OHL is Ontario. 60 teams added to the top there that are equal or better than the USHL, not in talent, equal and better in the fact that they're a known quantity to the NHL. Not that the USHL wasn't, but clearly the paths are all built into that model for pro hockey. But now they can add the NCAA in there. Now, it won't take any time at all for those teams in those leagues to get up to speed and have great relationships with all of Division I hockey. Now, it doesn't mean every kid that doesn't make the NHL is going to go play Division I hockey. No, that won't happen at all. You'll still have kids that very, very few go straight to the NHL. If you are just going to pro, you're going to play in a lesser league first, usually the AHL, and then AHL moving up from there. But what this does is it takes that kid in the BCHL, that kid that's sitting in, for example, the one kid that moved over today is a Quebec-born kid that was playing hockey in the States, and now he's got the ability to go back in Quebec and play major junior hockey near his hometown and be able to spend some time with his family and friends in a market that knows him, that he feels comfortable with before he leaves for either college. He's already an Ivy League committed kid, or if he does decide to go pro, then he's already set up and he's ready to make that transition much, much easier than playing in the American side in the States. I keep saying Wenatchee. I'm giving you the wrong name there, and I apologize for that. I'll give you the right name here. Give me a second on that. The team that got smoked so bad as far as the teams. And you're right. I was using Wenatchee because I'm used to them being a BCHL team until recently. My fault on that. Thank you for the comments, JP. The team that got smoked as far as the numbers was Chilliwack. Chilliwack got hit hard on this as far as my recollection goes over the last few weeks. So sorry about that. And JP, you get the star of the week of keeping me honest and keeping things running the right way. So thank you so much, JP. You're right. Wenatchee is on the other side now. They had already moved over to the league. Yes, Chilliwack, JP, that you're absolutely right on that. I think that maybe your timing and my timing are a little off on that. So as far as your response online, let's jump on a couple things first. I hope that makes a little sense on what's going on. I know I didn't get a complete description of all this. Ask questions. Please ask as many questions as you can so that I can make sure that I'm structuring this thought process right so everybody understands what's going on. So right now, if you look at the list of those 30 players or so, roughly in that area of committed NCAA Division I committed players that are now playing in major junior hockey, most of the kids, now there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, there's only 5 Americans. So these are Canadian kids that moved into that league. Some of them got their commitment, but most of them had already played in the WHL, and that's the league that's most affected by this change. And they played 3 or 4 years in the league already. But now they're coming to they're older kids in the league. They're coming to the end of their career as far as junior goes. Maybe the pro structure didn't look exactly the way they thought it was going to look 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe as they were promised as a rookie coming in the league. So Division I college hockey looks really, really good. Okay. So those are the kids that got committed. 2 colleges jumped up and jumped quick at this. Bemidji jumped into this game real quick. Bowling Green jumped in real quick. If you go to College Hockey Inc., they're both the ones that boom, 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 boom. They started committing kids, like crazy. Now, my theory on this is a little different than most. I look at this and I say, Bemidji and Bowling Green aren't what we call, heavily endowed schools, not endowed like you're thinking, get your mind out of the gutter. This is endowed like endowments. a big amount of money that's been set aside to be able to be utilized for the school. And a lot of times there's an endowment set up for different sports or for the athletic department. Um, so a school like Michigan. Now, one thing we didn't talk about is all of the schools starting next year have to abide by a new set of rules when it comes to scholarships. You see a lot of schools right now, they carry 30 plus players, 30, 31. You see some schools as low as 28, but it's not uncommon to see 30, 31 players on a roster. Okay, that's a big roster. But as far as scholarships goes, they were given 18 total scholarships at the Division I level. Now they could divvy up those anyway. Every one of those 30 kids could have a piece of those 18 scholarships, or they could have 18 full scholarship players and they could have 12 or 13 kids with no money whatsoever. Well, now the NCAA has come back and said, we are capping your rosters at 26. Can't have more than 26 kids now. That's it. But now you have 26 scholarships. So there's schools out there that are looking at this and going, oh, how are we going to fill that gap? If it's $30,000 a year for scholarships and 30 times 6, that's $180,000. Now we got to come up with a couple $100,000 extra every year just to maintain our budget. That's super, super difficult when, a lot of these places are already playing in front of, a full, arena, and, there's limited amount of, advertising because, a lot of times you're the third or fourth sport in your college. You're not at the, there's schools that are fortunate to be the top dog where their college hockey team is, the number one, feeder in their program. But that's usually with some of the small schools and a little bit more of the outlanding years. The bottom line of this, don't get hung up on that. The message here is, that you got to take care of those scholarship kids. Now, my theory, and I still haven't got a straight answer on this. If I have to move from 18 to 26, but I've got a Canadian player that's coming down from major junior hockey that has scholarship money that he's got by contract because he played 3 or 4 years in major junior hockey, can he offset that so I have to give him less of a scholarship in that 19 through 26 scholarship that I have to add? So I'm curious if that's one of the reasons why you see schools that are like Bowling Green that doesn't have this huge war chest. They're not Minnesota, they're not, Boston College, they're not Michigan. They don't have, this huge war chest. So maybe that's one way that they're trying to, get ahead of the curve, or maybe they've got good players up there that they've got great relationships with. You're going to find a lot of the assistant coaches and coaches that have coached in that league take advantage of this right away. They know the grounds, they know the turf. They're ahead of the game on that. So give me your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think on this as far as where this is going and how it's working. I'm super excited about this. I think that, we saw a little bit of settling as far as players moving around everywhere. Maybe that's because we're into the, everybody slows down before the holidays. I don't know if that's the case or not. In the U.S. side, that might be the case a little bit more than the Canadian side. We have our Thanksgiving that is earlier in the fall for Canadians. We're hitting that this week, so maybe that's slowing us down a little bit, maybe slowing the colleges down a little bit. But now here's the interesting thing. So we talked a little bit about, we kind of recapped this. We kind of gave an update as far as, we didn't see a lot of player movement. We saw no player movement as far as adding Americans or, I did forget to mention one Canadian player left the USHL, or at least on paper, it went from 41 players to 40 this week on the Canadian side. So there is one less Canadian playing in the USHL. Could be completely unrelated. Could be injury. Could be trade. Could be many, many different things. I don't know the answer, and I could not find out which player that was that actually left. And yes, that's the number of Canadians that play in the USHL 40. If you don't know, the total number of players that play in the major junior level that are Americans is up to 69. It was 66 last week. It's 69 right now. Or 2 weeks ago, it was 66. Went to 69 last week. Stayed at 69. And respectively, that's 29 in the WHL, 35 in the OHL, 5 in the Q. So yeah, that's it as far as where we're at right now. Now let's talk a little bit about, what this means for players. The easy one, top end players, you got more options now. Top end players, if you've already got your commitment and you want to go back and play, near home, that's great. You can go there now. If you're playing in the Midwest and the USHL, which the USHL is, it's a tough league to actually travel in. The one thing about the USHL is, let's pull up a map of the USHL and you can kind of look at this. Let me pull this up for you. Jump on here and give you the USHL map. So there's the USHL, and you can see, holy smokes, you got something way over on the eastern side of Ohio, which is way over here. If you can see my mouse, and then you look over here and you got things, the Sioux, Lincoln, all these things over here, Nebraska. It's just tough. You get up here at the top where, you get into the North Dakota area, South Dakota, North Dakota area. That's just tough sledding there. That's, if you're here and you've got to go here, National Training and Development in Michigan and Muskegon over here, you can see there's some long bus rides, and they're very similar to playing in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And I'm not saying that the WHL doesn't have a tough map themselves. The WHL definitely has a tough map. But because of the way they've broken down their league, it's a little bit different, and to give you an idea, let's jump on the WHL map and we'll show you the WHL map. Let me pull that up for you, give you a sense of, what that looks like over their space. There's the WHL. So yeah, don't get me wrong. You see a lot of, this is the Washington area here. You get into Oregon, right on the border with Washington. So basically it's Washington State. But if you notice the way they break down their league, their divisions, you've got an Eastern Division, which is, basically the Alberta area, Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, they're all close together. Then you get into the other side of it. And then if you notice down here, you got a Western side. This is all in the British. This is down by the island, Victoria. That's not that bad of travel. And then if you notice the U.S. based teams all sit down in their own division. It's called the Western Conference U.S. Division. So it's not really that bad. When I say travel, in comparison to travel in the North American Hockey League, which is pretty easy. And the reason that's easy is because they also, keep their divisions together, the South, the Midwest, the East. So anyway, what are your thoughts? Is any of this resonate as far as players getting the ability to go, play at home, getting the ability to play with more exposure, getting the ability to play where it's even more pro-like than the USHL, meaning there's just a better connection in a clearer direction on the pro level, where the USHL it has really always put the Division I level above that, with the exception of maybe the National Development Program, where there's a lot of interest in pro hockey right off the bat there. Your thoughts on this? Am I off base? What are you thinking on this as you see this? Let's answer a question first, and then I'm going to come back to giving you a little bit more of how things look. Dave is actually getting active on the board tonight. Do you see fewer null Division I commitments and possibly a resurgence of D2 hockey, or will the null commitments be pushed down to D3? Wow, that's a great question. So, the saving grace for, sorry about that. Dave's question here. The saving grace for the North American Hockey League is they already give a lot of attention to the Atlantic Hockey uh, Division One league. Atlantic Hockey is your Armies, your Air Force, your RITs, your Merrimacs, your or not Merrimacs, I'm sorry, your Mercyhursts of the world, your Canisiuses, your Niagaras of the world, and I could keep going. And there's Sacred Hearts in there. There's a lot of schools. Most of these schools within the last 10 years, 10, 12 years, were Division III schools that elevated up. And for many years, they were Division I in name, but never gave scholarships. And then it changed where they moved up the ladder until just a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, they finally moved up to 18 scholarships per team. And it's only been a couple of years that they've had full scholarships. The reason that's important is these are also the colleges that don't have high-end potential players, meaning it's rare to see a kid go to the NHL from this league, and it's extremely rare to see an NHL draft pick out of this league, where the other leagues all have draft picks, and some are more than others. A league with Michigan or a league with Boston College and BU in it, those leagues have a lot of NHL draft picks. The Atlantic doesn't, which means there's less, but not completely gone, chance of seeing a kid leave a situation to move into another league because he's doing it for pro hockey if he's already committed to an Atlantic school. So if he's in the null and he's got an Atlantic commitment, he's probably going to stay there. Remember, there's got to be somebody that wants you on the other end. The other side of this is, I don't know how much of a budget Atlantic schools can have to be chasing down all three of those major junior leagues to look for players and recruiting in those. That's adding a lot to what they already have as a pattern. The North American Hockey League is in the backyard of almost every Division I school in some form or in some form. USHL is a known commodity that makes the effort to go and play on the East Coast with showcases just for the Atlantic and for the East Coast teams to see their players. I don't think you're going to see as much, but the trickle down is different. I'm going to say right off the bat that one of the things we have to worry about on this is not so much what happens to the null, but what happens to everybody. I think the null is going to change. Do they lose the amount of Division I players? Absolutely, right off the bat. You can't not lose them, because what's going to happen is we've already seen 30 players that are now playing major junior hockey with Division I commitments. Okay, that's 30 players that come from somewhere. Now, could it be all BCHL? Right now, that's the league that's taking the hit. But that means that the BCHL will probably work really hard to find some kind of Division I college, as many as they can get Division I committed players. Now, the USHL competes with the BCHL. The North American Hockey League usually doesn't compete for that BCHL kid. It doesn't mean that a BCHL kid doesn't drop into the North American Hockey League. Happens all the time. But it's not the top end players. It's not the kid that's got the commitment to Minnesota. It's not the kid that's going to Michigan State. It's not the kid that's going to Penn State next year. It's usually the kid that's got an Atlantic or no commitment, that is either at the bottom of the roster or is in his last year. There's room to be an older player in the null, but there's not room on his team. Those kind of things. So that's usually the reason you'll see a kid go to the null from the BCHL. But the BCHL is going to work hard to fit. Now, the issue here is not so much, let's back up a little bit. Let's look at the landscape and let's look at some other issues that are going on first. We've already seen one Division I school, AIC, say, you know what, no mas. We are no longer a Division I program. AIC, American International College, is an Atlantic school, but they've been just pushing up on the top end of the Atlantic for the last few years. They've done a great job of building their roster. They've really been a good program. They're going to drop to Division II. Means they're still going to have some kind of form and fashion of scholarships available, because Division IIs can use scholarships. Division III can't. But they don't have to adhere to that 26 rule. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there is no national championship, and there's nothing right now. There's a handful of Division II schools, and you can look this up. Don't quote me on this. 6 to 8 teams. It's right in that range. AIC is the first one to drop out of Division I. Does all of this change as far as scholarship situation and portal? That's the big thing. You know, teams can afford to use the portal because they've got a reach, they've got a network built up. If they're strong, they're powerful. If a player is playing for Boston University, and he leaves in the portal, Boston University is going to be able to pick up the slack by picking up either another kid out of the portal or having something to be able to step in right away. Now, with that said, AIC doesn't have that same ability. They don't have the attractiveness of the major boys to be able to replace that portal. Some schools are dabbling into NIL now. It's not big in hockey yet, but it will be. It'll progress and grow. So AIC is basically looking at this now. Part of this whole deal with the scholarship increase is it's just not hockey that's been hit with this. The NCAA has increased baseball, tumbling, wrestling, all these other sports, women's basketball, women's hockey, all these other areas also are increasing their scholarship abilities up in numbers. Now, it's not 26 across the board. Baseball, has their number that they can improve to. Tumbling has their number, but they're all getting more scholarship added on. So some schools are going to look at this and they're going to say, you know what? I spend $3 or $4 million on hockey. Hockey brings back in the door $1.2 million. We've been losing money on hockey, for years. Even if they're break even, let's say there's a team out there that's figured out a way to break even in hockey. If I give up men's hockey and I'm spending $3 million, I can cover the rest of my scholarships for all my other sports. Let's drop men's hockey down to Division II, and we can cover everything else, or just drop men's hockey completely. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I don't know if this is well thought out on this increase in scholarships. It sounds good on paper, but who knows? Who knows where this heads here? So, Dave, the original question you asked about, how does this work and what does this do to the NAHL in general? I think the NAHL gets in on this. I think the NAHL has an issue here. I think the NAHL's issue more than just, Division I is the NAHL has expanded more than any other league and added more teams over the last 3 or 4 years than any other league. USHL, zero growth. BCHL did one move last year when they let teams from the AJ come in and join, which kind of set up a whole division with them. Did it dilute the product? Yeah, it did. But I think they did that because of what's happening right now. I think the BCHL said, look, with this movement, we're probably going to lose a team or two besides just having these players move up and migrate. We might lose a team or two to this whole thing happening because of the change in landscape, the change of the type of player that they get in. I think you're going to see a couple things happen. I know that there's talks going on every single day about teams joining major junior hockey, specifically teams out of the USHL. If that happens and the USHL has movement, I think the relationship between the USHL and the BCHL has to be explored. I think they have to come together and talk and try to find out a strategy, because now, the enemy of my enemy, that whole thing. The USHL is the biggest loser in this as far as their prestige and where they fit in the world. Okay. It's yet to be seen how many players they lose, but They're no longer top dog in the NCAA Division I world. Okay. They now are at least up here with 3 other leagues. Maybe they're in a better position than the Q, and the Q only because of language and cultural barriers, because of proximity, and because of, there's only 6 Americans up there right now. It's not an area that's ever really pushed hard to move into the American markets or to try to take advantage of American markets. This hasn't been their priority. So maybe the USHL is a little bit ahead of that league, but there's still, it's now a game of a group of 4 for NCAA Division I hockey, not a group of 1. So the USHL, especially now, who's likely to make a move? Well, the easiest ones that for me are the ones that the outlier is Youngstown. Youngstown's right down the street from Erie. Erie's right down the street from Toronto, which we shouldn't say right down the street. Definitely right down the street from Buffalo, which is the Niagara area. And so you got Niagara sitting right there. You got Toronto right up the street. It makes much more sense, in my opinion, for Youngstown to be involved. Okay. Does that happen or not? I don't know if it's going to happen, but it makes logical sense. The other one that would make a lot of sense to me right off the bat is Muskegon. Muskegon, because if you look at that map again, let's pull that map up of the WHL, or excuse me, the OHL. I don't know if we looked at the OHL map. I don't think we looked at it, but we'll look at it now. If you look at the OHL map, we'll get it. The map's on here. It's up top. I just got to scroll to it. I don't need to take any. You look at that map, Michigan already has 2 teams, Saginaw and Flint. Okay. Muskegon sits over on the west coast by the Lake Michigan over here. However, Windsor and Sarnia, right on the border right there, literally a bridge away. There you can see the rinks from the American side, at least the old rink. You used to be able to see it. And I'm talking about the Windsor rink. But they're that close to the border. So you've got 4 teams already in the proximity of Muskegon. Natural fit, in my opinion. Boom. And then, the other team that sits up there is Sault Ste. Marie, which is, once again, right across the border, sits right there. It sits on the Canadian side, the Sioux Greyhounds. But remember, Sault Ste. Marie, the city, is actually named Sault Ste. Marie on both sides of the border. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and Sault Ste. Marie, Canada. They're literally, been up there many, many times. It's essentially the same area. It's essentially, you got to go across the border, but big deal. That makes a lot of sense to me. So Muskegon, Youngstown, real easy to see them making that decision to make a move. So, the other one that makes a little sense is if you go way up in the top here and you look at Fargo. You look at Fargo and their proximity to anything on the north. Maybe Fargo is a good candidate to make the move. Now, why would they make the move? Well, once again, it's the OHL to the USHL. The focus and the priority becomes unified with the NHL in a much more direct way. That's one. Number 2 is, you get fans that travel in that league much more than you do in the USHL. A USHL team from the Midwest, the Fargo Force playing in Youngstown, they're not traveling. Fargo doesn't bring 300 fans, 500 fans with them when they travel. If you watch any of the games when you're talking about the OHL, they have a traveling base. They have a loyal fan base that travels. And because there's such a tie with the NHL, you'll see a lot more fans that are NHL fans that know there's a draft pick that will come into the stands and be wearing a jersey. If the kid's a Buffalo draft pick, they'll be wearing a Buffalo jersey with the kid's name on it already. That happens all the time. That's OHL. You might see a little bit of that in the USHL, but not as much. But there's some natural fits that could happen here. So I think the first thing we got to be concerned about is, what the shift is going to be. You've already seen a college team drop out. Do we have more colleges drop out? As far as the way things are setting up, you've seen some hemorrhaging in the BCHL. Does the BCHL have some teams that go, you know what, we just can't fight this fight anymore. We're gonna settle at a lower level and focus on a different type of junior hockey, or does the whole thing stay the way it stays in status quo? I don't believe that. I think you're going to have some shifts there, and you're going to have some consolidation of programs there. So that's the real important area that I think we got to be concerned about, is how this all shifts out. Now, once again, what does this do for players? What does this mean for players, and how far down does it go? Well, we already know that. Look, if the USHL loses 2 or 3 teams, not saying it's going to happen, but if the USHL does lose 2 or 3 teams, they're going to backfill. They have to. That league would be too small. They're going to backfill. Where is the natural pickups for the backfill? It's going to come from the null. In my opinion, they'll pick up some nulls, and most likely it'll be some of those big names that sit in the Midwest already. They're already in the same marketplace. I don't think you're going to see some East Coast null teams. I don't think you'll see teams from the South. They'll keep them from the same area. It'll be teams that are already in that Wisconsin, Dakotas, Minnesota footprint, and there's already good quality franchises there. And I know that these teams are preparing for this stuff, even if they're not in the conversation already. The other thing that think about, watch out for some wild cards. Watch out for some wild cards. Watch out for Buffalo and the Buffalo Junior Sabres that are playing in the OJHL, which is a junior. We've talked about it many times. It's a junior league out of Canada. It's an Ontario Junior Hockey League. Watch them bid to become something. Is that something either a OHL team in the major junior ranks, which would be logical, make a lot of sense, and give Niagara a nice close partner? I don't think there'd be much crossover in the market as far as fan base, just because of the way Niagara and Buffalo are sitting right now. Watch them, see which way they go. Do they jump into the USHL? The other team that you got to watch out for is Rochester, New York. Rochester is well funded, maybe funded better than most at the junior level. Watch to see what happens with their program and where they're bidding to get in with all this. Once again, nobody in their right mind is sitting on their hands while all this is going on. If you're sitting in that marketplace where there's change going on around you, these teams are going to do something, or the leagues are going to do something. And what teams they do, I'm going to either try to protect my turf or to improve my status if I'm a current owner in a current team in any of the leagues that you're playing in. So, watch for that. So, all right, let's get on for a couple questions. Then I'm going to try to answer again about the player situation. All right, Jeff's come on, and Jeff says audio is much better. Glad to hear. Glad to hear that the audio and video is working much better. We need that. All right, this is a serious one here. I got a 5-year-old showbound, but all he can focus on is Fortnite and Riz. Ben, you got a lot of issues to deal with over the next few years. I'm not sure. First of all, you might make more money on Fortnite than you would with hockey, because they've got leagues and they've got people that actually make money on those. So maybe putting a little more focus on the video games, a lot more focus, and maybe that'll help. Jim comes on and says Hockey Canada has now the upper hand. This is taking power from USA Hockey. You took the words right out of my mouth, Jim. You couldn't have said it better. This position of power is absolutely back in the hands of the Canadians. And maybe not in a bad way. Maybe this is a good thing. Remember, the last time USA Hockey made a huge move for change is when the NHL had to deal with the KHL. When the KHL became a big thing, the NHL said, well, we're not going to develop players over there. I've got a video on this that talks about the USA Hockey in general. But what it did was it just snowballed this big movement towards change. And USA Hockey wanted to be a part of it and wanted to grab that grant money from the NHL that the NHL dangled in front of them. So they made major changes to keep up. Now, there's not major money in front of USA Hockey now, but if the USHL is no longer the home of NCAA Division I hockey, which it has been now for 15, 20 years, if not longer, it is the hub. What does this do? Does this take the emphasis off the National Development Program? Does the National Development Program have less to dangle in front of a kid? A kid now says National Development Program gets me ready for pro hockey. And, because all those kids are getting drafted. They're just amazing numbers with the National Development Program. But does a team like Kitchener, does a team like Erie now have more to offer that kid to say, hey, look, play for us, and we can do everything that they did and more for you? That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Clearly, USA Hockey, losers on this list right now, the biggest losers, ECHL, taking a huge hit. USA Hockey taking a hit, no longer has the upper hand, no longer has control. Although they never really controlled the NCAA, what they did was they had the ability to say, we are the ones falling because of the USHL. The USHL is the third one. That's the one that's taking the hit. Number 4 is going to be the North American Hockey League. The North American Hockey League, because of their overexpansion, is overexposed to this problem. So they could lose 2 or 3 teams that have to backfill the USHL. That could be the first thing. And I know that there's teams that are already positioning at the lower levels at Tier 3 juniors to step in and to fill a hole just in case that does happen. Okay, the other side of it is everybody's got to get used to Tier 3 North American Hockey League, USHL, to getting a different kind of player. Does all this mean that the North American Hockey League it goes by the way of the dodo bird and dinosaurs? No, I don't believe that at all. As long as they can adjust. Now, the NCDC had the same issue. The NCDC came into formation thinking they were going to go right at the North American Hockey League. They were going to compete for the same players. It never happened. They were never able to do that. And reluctantly, they decided they're going to focus on the Division III hockey. Probably won't admit it outside in public, but really, they're a great feeder to Division III hockey. Remember, as far as fresh commits, they get 10, 12 a year of fresh committed players to Division I. The rest of their players are going to Division III. As long as the North American Hockey League can live with that adjustment. Now, don't get me wrong. The NAHL, the North American Hockey League, already puts a lot of players into Division III hockey. They just have to be ready to increase that number up and know that they're going to be decreasing the level of players at the top end as far as Division I commitments by at least 30, because we've already seen 30 leave. And if it's 30 is the top end we see every year, okay, that's 30 that's not necessarily going to stop going to the USHL. They're going to get a different brand of player now too, but that's going to be that backfill is going to hit mostly in the North American Hockey League. My opinion. Thoughts on this? Anybody agree, disagree? Love to hear what you're thinking on this. I know I'm covering a lot, and there's a lot to talk about with this, but man, oh man, it's exciting. If I'm a player, I said this last week, if I'm a player right now, and I've played 1 or 2 years of junior hockey, and I've got any ability to go play Division III or Division I, any ability, I want to grab that now. If I'm not a top-end guy, I'm going to grab it. In other words, I'm talking to an Atlantic school right now, and I've got the ability to step in that Atlantic school, and they've said, hey, look, we love you. we would love to commit to you. But, we're looking at 26, 27. I'm going to say 25, 26, and you got me. Okay. Can you get me in next year? If not, maybe look at some D3 schools right away, the high-end D3s. Why? Because the potential of 60 new teams that have every one of those teams has potentially players that are going to be Division I players that, kids, for whatever reason, decide to get off of the wheel, the little wheel. What is that for hamsters? That little hamster wheel. They're decided to get off of it and go, all right, I'm going to go Division I. With 60 new teams with that potential, man, oh man, I'm looking at this. If I'm that borderline D1 player, if I'm that borderline D3 player, borderline D1, if I can jump in a D1 or a high level D3 school, I'm snapping at it. I'm getting off this hamster wheel now and taking what I can get. If I'm a guy that is borderline D3, in other words, I've got some interest and maybe I'm holding out to see if I'm a D1 guy. Maybe I'm holding off for one of the top end schools. I want an Adrian. I want Lake Superior, or not Lake Superior. I want Adrian. I want Geneseo. I want whoever's the top NESCAC school. Now I'm looking for somebody on the top to grab me. I'd be grabbing anything right now at a quality school that fits my education needs and getting off the hamster wheel. I want to beat that tsunami that could potentially happen. Right now it's potential. We've only seen 30. But 60 teams, let's say it becomes 10 a team. That's 600. Okay? All of a sudden that changes the world drastically, and it changes the world quickly. Okay? Think of where the tsunami can come from. The tsunami is going to come from the potential of how many players this could draw. Okay? And if that happens, I don't want to be stuck without a place to go. When the music stops, I want a chair to sit in. I recommend that before the music stops, get in a chair so you don't have to worry about when the music stops. That's my advice in this situation. This is crazy time right now. This is crazy time. And the time to jump right now, as far as I'm concerned, is faster, sooner than later. So, juniors is fun. But if I can get a spot where I can play and be happy, D3 hockey is going to be looked at completely differently in 2 years now. ACHA hockey, all three levels are going to be looked at completely differently because of the push down. You're going to see Canadian players, because remember, once again, how many Americans are playing up there? There's only a handful of Americans that are up there. So you're not going to see a bunch of major junior players that are already U.S. bound citizens. Yeah, you're going to see them commit, but the number's so small, we don't have to worry about that. It's the Canadians that are playing major juniors. They're going to jump, and when they jump, it could be a tsunami. It literally could be a tsunami. Give me your thoughts on that. I got a couple of things. Let's see what Jim has to say here. From what I understand, the American Junior Leagues only allow 2 Canadians per team. Would that be advantageous for leagues to allow an unlimited amount? Okay, for the American Junior Leagues, that's not true on the American Junior Leagues. That the NAL has a higher number of that Canadians that can be on the roster. The USHL has a higher number, and then the NCDC and lower levels you can have bigger numbers. As far as major junior teams, the American teams are playing under the same rules as the rest of the major juniors. So no, there is no number. The number now. The rule just changed again this year, but we can pull up the rosters and look. Which let's do that. Let's have a little fun with this. Let's grab a NAL roster here real quick, and we can just look at the NAL in general and get an idea how many players are playing at that level. But I think it's up to. I know you can have 6 imports now, but I don't believe they can all be Canadian. But that number can fluctuate depending on how many you have. But if we just go down and look at the amount in the NAL, which is the easiest one to grab, and you see the amount of Canadian players, you've got 99 players from Canada playing in a league with 30 some odd teams. So you got at least an average of 3 on each team right now. So yeah, that number's higher than 2. and I think it's 2 or 3, maybe up to 4, depending on how many you've got from Europe. Anybody that's still, I'm involved with a league, but I don't have that in front of me. I can definitely get that up, put it in the notes. But let's see what but I know it's more than 2. So, and then as far as the NCDC, that number is crazy now. USHL, they might be limited to 3 or 4 also, but that rule just changed this year. So, all right. Thanks, JP. Let's see. Jeff says, can you comment on the rumor of NCAA players being employees under the new rules, which limits import eligibility? Okay, this is still being litigated. So, Jeff, it's a tough one to answer about this employee, the NIL situation. We're seeing this being played out with football too. The schools are involved now with building their own, basically, it's like politics where they're building these super PACs and these alumni groups, and these are getting together in pooling resources, but the school's got a say in it. And I think that's going to be litigated out here real soon, but I don't have an answer. I'm watching it closely. And to be honest with you, I'm watching it more in football because it's easier to watch with football. It moves faster because of the amount of money that's being thrown around and the amount of attention given it to it. So I think we'll see something happen. Once again, the University of Michigan was heavily involved with this Bryce Underwood deal for $12 million for the new quarterback at Michigan coming in as a freshman next year. They flipped him out of LSU. Is that money, is he an employee? Is he working for the team? Is he working for this, for lack of better terms, this super PAC? Who does he report to? Who's paying the taxes? All this is still all being flushed out. And but as soon as we start getting a little bit clearer picture, I'll be glad to let you know. I've got 2 lawyers in the family, soon to have 3. And I ask them questions on this all the time. And I get the standard lawyer answer, which is, well, it depends. It depends. That's not a good answer right now. So, but Jeff, as soon as we get a better answer, I'll gladly, fill you in on what I know. You might get an answer faster than I do. BCHL attracts a lot of Americans, and it's made their league what it is. Absolutely. I mean, I've got videos out there. We've talked about it. We've tracked this league. We love this league over the years. And, it used to be you get 100 Americans up there, and the number was higher than that. You get 50% coming from prep, and you get 50% that were not prep. You get them coming in holding their Division I scholarship in hand. They'd commit to a Division I program. They'd go up there. Perfect example is a kid that played for me, Kevin Wall. Played prep, got his commitment to Penn State while he was playing prep, went up for one kind of a grooming year. A lot of the American prep kids would go up, play a grooming year in the BCHL, then head to their Division I school. These were all higher end kids playing for the better Division I programs, and it was a factory. We saw a ton of prep kids going up to play in the BCHL. How does that change? I don't know. I don't know if that prep model gets pushed over into the Western out of the BCHL, or if the BCHL, if it's being held on by individual relationships with either owners, managers, or coaches inside the BCHL. Up until now, it was a really nice model. The BCHL was a great league to play in. It's just really changed a lot in the last year. The AJ, the advent of that coming in and adding on this whole new pressure with players leaving to the W, I don't know where. And it was not just the W. There's players going to the Q and out of the BCHL. And I think a lot of it's just, hometown roots. A lot of these kids are like, why would I play in BCHL? I'm from Quebec, and I get a chance to go back and play in the Quebec area. I want to do it. I want to play near my hometown, family and friends. It's my last chance before I go to college. Why not? So we'll see. But you're absolutely right, JP. It is actually a very attractive league, or at least has been up until this point. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Jim says NCAA will be all Canadian by 2026. It's like the NCAA allowing Brazil League, one one pros to get the full rides, and so yeah. I don't know if that's Jim, if I can completely agree with that, because there's still a ton of talent in the United States. The United States has closed the gap, and all you have to do is look at the NHL and the amount of Americans that play in the NHL. We've got videos out there on that too. That number has moved up drastically over. In fact, as the Europeans grow and America grows, Canada, as far as NHL production, has been on a 20-year slide, slowly but steady on the downside, while the Americans have grown or stayed flat and grown and stayed flat and grown. Europeans slow growth too. So I don't know if you're going to see that go away. And if the NHL product, which has the Americans in the NHL are almost all NCAA Division I players. So I don't think that goes away. So I don't know if I would say that it would be as drastic as you're saying, but I definitely think that there'll be, hey, two things are happening at the same time. Reduction of rosters, less players, okay? Canadian kids aren't coming down to be the 28th or 29th player on a Division I team and pay for that spot. So we're not going to see those spots be filled by Canadians. Those spots were filled by Americans. Now that we're reducing the roster to 26, who's to say who fits that 19 through 26 spots? That could be 6, 7 Americans. It could be 6, 7 Canadians. The odds just went up. Now, don't forget, the other part of this is there's always been a stigma in America not to play major juniors, because you don't want to give up that, just that coveted, it was almost like the sky open and is thou shall not play major junior. And you were looked at as this sinner if you stepped over the border and you played on one of these teams. I mean, it really was like you were Darth Vader. You were a bad guy. I don't want to say bad guy. That's not the right word, but, why would you do that? And there's stigma came along. Oh, he couldn't he didn't have enough brains to get into college. Oh, he did blah, 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 blah. None of that was probably true, but there was definitely pressure to be on the NCAA side of the coin. USA Hockey, College Hockey Inc., NCAA Division I, they all work together to build this illusion that you had to stay on this side. Rightfully so, I would too. It's market protection. However, now you're going to see the doors open. You're going to see more players up there. Why are the numbers so low on Americans? I'll give you an exact reason why. I'll give you example, more and more examples. It's easy. I'm talking to two kids. One kid's living he's living up on the prairie in Canada. Doesn't know anything, or he's living in Quebec. Very, very, very common situation. A Quebec player doesn't know anything about NCAA Division I hockey because it's not part of their world. They're part of the world that's learning to play up through the system, with the Q being on top of the food chain. If I can get to the Q, I'm going to make it. I can make it to the NHL. That's mindset. An American kid, if I'm going to draft an American kid and I'm a major junior, once again, I'm Kitchener or I'm Brampton, and I'm looking at it, or I'm Sarnia or Windsor. I'm right there. I got all these, great Tier 1 elite teams, U16 right across the border. Why am I not getting more of these kids? The reason is because if you say, hey, what are your options? And the kid says, well, I've got 3 colleges that are looking at me. All of a sudden, Brampton's going, I got 100% shot from the kid that's up in Sudbury that he'll want to play for me if I draft him. I've got a 20% shot that this American will play for me. So an American that could be a first or second round OHL draft pick maybe gets picked up in the 7th, 8th, or 9th round, just because they don't trust that he'll come if he's drafted that team. Where there's a Canadian kid that there's 100% loyalty, boom, they draft me, I'm there. And I'm there with bells on. Yes, sir, I'm in line, I'm waiting to go. No problems with me here. The American saunters in to the whole process going, I've got options, and I'm just up here putting my toe in the water to see if it was worth coming up. That all goes away now. That absolutely all goes away. So hopefully that helps a little bit with that. Okay, what did I say here? Jim says, or Hockey Dad says, Jim, it was our U18. Not sure. That was probably some cross conversations going on here. All right. With that said, boy, oh boy, I'd love to see some more comments. Love to keep this going, but folks, I gotta tuck in. Next few days are going to be great. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving turkey, Lions are on. Lions are. This may be the one time in my life where the Lions actually have a chance to win on Thanksgiving, and are probably favored to win. Gotta love that. Friday, watch a lot of good sports on Friday. Saturday, the Michigan-Ohio State football game, and recovery. So a lot of things going on, and most of it wasn't hockey, and probably won't be hockey for the next 4 or 5 days. Let me know what you think, folks. I'm so glad you tuned in. If I didn't cover something that I said I was going to cover, it's only because we're out of time. Hopefully, this information helped. I'm glad the quality picked up on our end. For whatever reasons, we saw a decline over the last few weeks. And everybody, have a great Thanksgiving on Americans and Canadians. Have a great weekend. Have a great American Thanksgiving tomorrow, too. We're thinking about you as we sit down to our turkey meal. And hopefully you guys all have a great Thursday as well and a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Thank you.